Her voice wasn't just beautiful, it was haunting. Herb Alpert had heard thousands of voices in his long career. But when Karen Carpenter sang, something changed in the room. It wasn't just about perfect pitch or soft tones. It was something deeper, something that stayed with you. Herb, now 90, leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes as he remembered the first time he heard her sing. "She sounded like heartbreak dressed in velvet," he said softly. It was 1969. Herb was already a big name, thanks to the success of his own band and his co-founding of A&M Records. He wasn't looking for anything new. Then a demo tape came in, sent by a brother and sister duo nobody had ever heard of. When he played the tape, everything stopped. Karen's voice filled the room like a ghost from another world. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. But it went straight to the soul. "Send them in," Herb told his team. When Richard and Karen Carpenter walked into A&M Records, they looked like shy college kids. Karen barely spoke. Richard did most of the talking. But when she sang again, live in the studio, Herb knew. He leaned over to his partner and whispered, "We're signing them. Now." Karen didn't think she was the star. She thought she was just the drummer. "I'm not really a singer," she said quietly. Herb smiled. "You don't know what you are yet," he replied. But fame came fast. Within a year, "Close to You" was everywhere. The Carpenters were America's new favorite sound. Soft, clean, emotional, but there was more behind it than people knew. Behind the perfect songs and the sweet image, something wasn't right. And Herb saw it early. "She'd walk into a room and smile," he said, but her eyes, they told another story. As the hits piled up, the pressure grew. The industry wanted them to look a certain way, sound a certain way, always be perfect. Karen was kind, gentle, and humble. But she was also fragile. And no one knew how fragile until it was too late. Herb would check in with her from time to time, asking how she was feeling. She'd always say the same thing, "I'm fine." But Herb knew she wasn't. "I wish I had pushed harder," he said now, at 90. "I wish I had seen what was really going on." Because behind the spotlight, Karen Carpenter was fighting a quiet, deadly battle. And hardly anyone noticed, until it was far too late. The industry that praised her broke her. By the early 70s, the Carpenters were superstars. Every new single topped the charts. Every concert sold out. But while Richard Carpenter was praised for his arrangements and musical vision, it was Karen who carried the emotional weight. She sang about love, loneliness, and longing like someone who had lived it all. But the truth was, Karen hadn't lived much at all. She was barely in her 20s, yet she carried the pressure of a superstar. And that pressure started to show. Not in public, not yet, but behind the scenes, Herb began to notice the changes. She was quieter than usual. Her smile didn't last as long. And slowly, she began to shrink. At first, people said nothing. Some whispered. Others made jokes. The press focused on her thin frame, calling it graceful. But Herb saw it differently. She was disappearing, he said. During one studio visit in 1975, Herb sat down with Karen in the lounge. She was sipping diet soda and avoiding eye contact. "You okay?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Just tired. We've been working nonstop." But Herb noticed her arms. So thin. Too thin. He wanted to say something. But he didn't know how. In those days, eating disorders weren't something people talked about. It wasn't part of the conversation. Especially not for someone like Karen, who was always smiling, always professional. Richard was starting to worry too. He had his own demons, stress, pills, but he began noticing that Karen was skipping meals. Studio lunches were untouched. She spent more and more time alone in her dressing room. She started slipping away, Herb said. And none of us knew what to do. By 1976, the cracks were visible. Karen collapsed in the studio once. They said it was exhaustion. But behind the scenes, whispers turned into real concern. Her clothes no longer fit. Her energy faded. Herb finally pulled her aside. "Karen," he said, "whatever this is, you don't have to face it alone." She looked up at him, and for the first time, her smile faded completely. "I don't think I know how to stop," she whispered. That moment never left him. Decades later, he still remembered the fear in her voice. "We didn't have the tools back then," Herb said. "We didn't know how serious it was." Karen was caught between the music she loved and the image the world demanded. And the image was winning. But no one knew just how far it would go. Because in just a few years, the girl with the golden voice would fall silent forever. The day everything stopped. It was February 4th, 1983. A cold morning in Downey, California. Herb Alpert was in his office at A&M Records when the call came in. He knew instantly something was wrong. His assistant's voice cracked as she handed him the phone. It was Richard. "Karen's gone," he said, almost whispering. Herb didn't speak. He couldn't. He just stared out the window, gripping the phone, trying to understand what he'd just heard. Karen Carpenter, 33 years old, dead from heart failure. The news hit the music world like an earthquake. Fans wept openly. Radio stations played her songs non-stop. But for Herb, it wasn't just about losing a star. It was about losing someone he had watched grow from a shy girl into a once-in-a-generation artist, only to see her break under the very thing she loved most, music. She didn't die of fame, Herb said softly, years later. She died of what fame demands. Karen's death was officially ruled as heart failure caused by complications related to anorexia nervosa. For many people, it was the first time they'd even heard the word. Eating disorders weren't discussed openly. But now, they had a face. A voice. A tragedy. Herb attended the funeral with hundreds of others, musicians, executives, family, fans. He remembered the silence in the church. The tears. The disbelief. How could someone so young, so talented, be gone so suddenly? Richard looked like a ghost. The man who once directed orchestras with confidence now sat quietly in the front row, staring at nothing. Herb kept thinking back to that first meeting. To that first tape. To the moment Karen sang live in front of him. She could have done anything, he said. She could have changed music forever. And in a way, she did. But not the way anyone wanted. In the days after Karen's death, the media rushed to cover her story. Headlines called it a tragedy. A wake-up call. But for those who knew her, it was something else. It was a failure, by the industry, by the people around her, even by themselves. Herb never stopped thinking about what more he could have done. I should have pushed harder, he said. I should have made her step back. I saw it. I knew something wasn't right. But I didn't act. He paused. And I'll carry that with me for the rest of my life. As years went by, the music world changed. New stars rose. New voices filled the airwaves. But Karen Carpenter's voice remained. Timeless. Haunting. Unforgettable. And for Herb Alpert, now in his 90s, her story still echoes louder than any trumpet he ever played. She was too good for this world, he said. Too gentle. Too true. But the world never knew how much it would miss her, until it was too late. And Herb never forgave himself. But there was one thing he still hadn't shared. One secret. One final conversation that changed everything. Her last words to me. It was late January 1983, just a few days before Karen died. Herb Alpert got a call from her out of the blue. She didn't usually reach out on her own, not like this. She always seemed careful, like she didn't want to bother people. But this time was different. Herb, she said softly, do you have a minute? He did. He always would for her. She asked if she could come by the studio. No cameras. No press. Just a visit. When she arrived, Herb hardly recognized her. She was smiling, but her body looked fragile, like a candle that had been burning too long. She was wearing a loose sweater and holding a small notebook. Herb sat with her in his office. They didn't talk about music. Not right away. She talked about cooking, about trying new recipes, about maybe even doing a solo album, one that sounded different from anything she'd done before. I want to try something raw, she said. Something honest. I don't want to hide behind strings anymore. Herb listened closely. He felt something in her voice that he hadn't heard in years, hope, a spark. Then she looked down at her notebook and slid it across the table. These are lyrics I've been working on, she said. Herb picked it up and read. The words were simple, but heartbreaking. They spoke about feeling invisible, about wishing someone would really see her, not the voice, not the fame, but the real Karen. As he read, Karen looked out the window. Sometimes, she whispered, I wonder if anyone ever really knew me. That broke Herb. He put the notebook down and leaned forward. Karen, you're not alone. People love you. She smiled, gently. Yeah, but do they really know me? There was silence. A kind of silence you don't forget. Then she said something he never repeated for decades. If anything ever happens to me, Herb, please don't let them remember me as just the sad girl who sang sad songs. I don't want to be a tragedy. Herb promised he wouldn't. They hugged goodbye. It was a quiet, long hug, the kind you don't realize is the last until it's too late. When Karen walked out of the studio that day, Herb stood in the doorway and watched her go. Something in him wanted to run after her. To say, wait, let's talk more. Let's fix this. But he didn't. And a week later, she was gone. Herb kept that notebook. He never showed it to anyone. Not even Richard. It stayed in a drawer in his home, untouched for decades. Sometimes he'd take it out late at night and read the words again. And each time, he heard her voice. Not the perfect studio voice. Not the radio voice. Just Karen. Raw. Honest. Human. And that's the version of her he wanted the world to know. Because the girl behind the music wasn't a tragedy. She was a masterpiece. But there's still one part of the story no one knew, not even Richard. The moment Herb realized just how deep Karen's pain went, and the shocking message she left behind. The note she never sent. A few months after Karen's death, Herb Alpert got a quiet call from Agnes Carpenter, Karen's mother. They hadn't spoken much since the funeral. Agnes was devastated, withdrawn. But that day, her voice was steady. "There's something you should see," she said. It was in Karen's drawer. "I think she meant it for you." Herb drove straight to the Carpenter home in Downey. The house felt different now. Quieter. Colder. The air seemed frozen in time. Karen's room was untouched. Her drums still stood in the corner. Her records lined the shelf. And there, on her vanity, was a sealed envelope with Herb's name on it. He took it in his hands, heart pounding. It was dated January 28, 1983, just 1 week before she died. He sat on her bed and opened it. The handwriting was delicate, but the words were heavy. "Dear Herb, I don't know if I'll ever be brave enough to give you this. But if you're reading it, then I guess I finally found a way. You always believed in me. Even when I didn't believe in myself. When people only saw the album covers and the stage smile. You saw the tired girl behind it all. I'm sorry if I let you down. I'm sorry if I made you worry. I've spent so long trying to be what everyone wanted. Thin enough, sweet enough, perfect enough. But I forgot how to just be Karen. Thank you for always being gentle with me. For listening when no one else did. If I don't make it, please tell my story honestly. Not for sympathy. But so maybe the next girl doesn't have to go through this. I hope there's music wherever I'm going. Love, Karen." Herb didn't cry when he first read it. He couldn't. He just sat there, staring at the paper, as 1,000 memories hit him at once. The studio sessions. The laughter. The silence. The weight she carried so quietly. This wasn't just a goodbye. It was a request. A final truth from someone who never felt safe enough to speak it aloud. And from that moment on, Herb knew what he had to do. He couldn't change what happened. He couldn't bring her back. But he could make sure the world never forgot the real Karen Carpenter, the girl with the golden voice and the broken heart, who sang with more honesty than anyone ever dared. He shared the letter's message, not the letter itself, with other musicians, young artists, anyone who came through A&M's doors looking for fame. He'd sit them down and say, "Don't lose yourself trying to please the world." I knew someone who did. In 2023, for the first time, Herb spoke publicly about the letter in a rare interview. "I kept it private for 40 years, he said. But I think now, finally, it's time the world hears from Karen. Not just her music, but her truth. And that truth changed everything. But the story doesn't end there. Because what happened after Karen's death would spark a movement, and a healing that would take decades to understand. The voice that saved others. Karen Carpenter didn't know she would become a symbol. Not for her songs, though they would live forever, but for something much deeper. Something painful. Something most people didn't talk about at the time. After her death, Herb Alpert noticed something happening. Young singers, especially women, started coming forward. Quietly at first. Then louder. They spoke of body pressure. Of eating in secret, or not at all. Of hiding the truth to keep their careers alive. Many of them said the same thing. "I didn't even know what I was going through, until I heard what happened to Karen." In the years following 1983, Karen's name appeared in medical studies, awareness campaigns, and school programs. Anorexia nervosa, once barely mentioned, now had a face people recognized. A voice they remembered. And it wasn't statistics that woke people up, it was Karen's story. And behind many of those efforts was Herb. He didn't want her legacy to be a cautionary tale. He wanted it to be a call to action. So he quietly supported organizations working on eating disorder education. He funded music programs that focused on emotional wellness, not just talent. And when young artists visited A&M, he didn't just talk about their sound. He talked about their soul. "You're more than your image," he'd say. I knew someone who forgot that. She had the most beautiful voice I've ever heard. And it wasn't enough to save her. Some artists cried. Some didn't know what to say. But every one of them listened. Richard Carpenter, still grieving but determined, also stepped into the light. He gave interviews. He told the truth, about their family, their struggles, and what they'd all missed. In 1989, a TV movie titled The Karen Carpenter Story aired and stunned millions. It showed the reality behind the soft songs and bright smiles. Karen's fans, old and new, started writing letters to Herb and Richard. Some shared how her music helped them through heartbreak. Others said it saved their lives. But many spoke about how her death gave them the courage to face their own silent battles. "She made me feel seen," one wrote. "Even in death, Karen was giving people something she never felt herself, understanding. Herb, now approaching his 91st year, looked out at a world very different from the one he and Karen had once worked in. Artists today speak openly about mental health, body image, pressure, vulnerability. And though many don't realize it, a part of that shift started with her. With the voice that was too pure for its time. With the girl who never wanted to be a symbol, but became one anyway. Karen never wanted fame, Herb said. She just wanted to sing. That was all. And in the end, it's her voice that remains. Soft, honest, unforgettable. But there's still one final piece of the story. One that even Herb hadn't shared publicly until now. The song she wrote, just days before she died, meant to be her next release. A song no one's heard. Until now. The lost song. Herb Alpert kept the notebook locked away for decades. Karen's lyrics, unfinished, fragile, full of emotion, were too personal to share. But there was one page at the very back. A song. Complete. Titled in her handwriting. If I Disappear. No one had ever seen it. Not Richard. Not the label. Just Herb. It was dated January 30th, 1983, 5 days before her death. The lyrics weren't polished. There were crossed out lines, little arrows, notes in the margins. But the message was clear. It was Karen's goodbye. But not just a goodbye to life, a goodbye to the weight she had carried for so long. If I disappear tomorrow, will the music still remain? Will they listen to my silence like they listened to my pain? I sang the words they gave me, but never told them mine. Now here they are, between the lines. If I disappear tomorrow, please don't dress me up in gold. I was never meant to sparkle. I just wanted to feel whole. Don't paint me like a perfect star, I cracked like anyone. But all I had was melody to lean upon and run. If I disappear tomorrow, remember me like this. A voice that tried to matter, a girl too scared to miss. Don't cry for me with headlines, don't turn me to a myth. Just play the songs I whispered, and know I once existed. Herb read the words again and again. He could hear her singing it in his mind, soft piano behind her, no strings, no harmonies. Just Karen, raw and open. In 2024, he finally made a decision. With Richard's blessing, and the help of modern producers who worshipped Karen's work, Herb created a simple, respectful recording. He took Karen's original voice from old studio reels, one single vocal take from a long-forgotten demo, and paired it with the melody Richard helped bring to life using Karen's handwritten notes. It wasn't a commercial release. It wasn't marketed. It was uploaded quietly to a private site, and shared first with fans who had followed Karen's journey for decades. The reaction? Overwhelming. People cried. People wrote poems. Some said it was like hearing from a ghost, gentle, full of love, and aching with truth. The track, If I Disappear, spread across fan forums, tribute channels, and music blogs. Not because of hype, but because of heart. And Herb? He finally felt peace. She gave the world so much, he said. And the world finally gave her something back, the chance to be heard exactly how she wanted. At 90, Herb Alpert had spoken his truth. He had shared the weight, the guilt, the beauty, and the heartbreak of knowing Karen Carpenter. But above all, he reminded the world of one thing. Karen wasn't just a voice. She was a human being. And even now, she sings on.